Welcome to the Orlando Sentinel Editorial Board interview with State Representative LaVon Bracy Davis, who's one of 4 Democrats facing off in a June 24th special election for Florida Senate District 15. That seat was vacated when incumbent Senator Geraldine Thompson passed away on February 13th. The seat, based in West Orange County, includes most of the cities of Winter Garden, Ocoee, Eatonville, and Apopka, as well as the neighborhoods of Paramore, Pine Hills, Washington Shores, and Dr. Phillips. This Democratic primary also includes attorney Coretta Anthony Smith, former Congressman Alan Grayson, and Randolph Bracy, who served 1 term in the Senate and challenged Thompson in 2024. The winner of this contest will face Republican Willie Montague in September. Before we get started, one more brief note about this race. In almost every case, the Sentinel interviews candidates jointly. We're making an exception in this race, so be sure to watch the interviews with the other primary candidates as well. To the best of our ability, we'll ask each candidate to answer the same questions in roughly the same time frame. That's because these interviews are not intended to be debates or brawls. Instead, they're a chance for each candidate to talk about what they would hope to accomplish should voters choose them. That's why we ask candidates to refrain from personal attacks and to limit their answers to 1.5 minutes per question. Each candidate will also be given 2 minutes at the end to give a brief closing statement. Joining us today is the Sentinel's executive editor, Roger Simmons.
Hi, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and we sure our readers will appreciate hearing from you as well.
And our opinion editor, Chris Fluker.
Thanks. Also, we are always glad to get started on the new campaign season.
I'm Jay Reddick. I'm the Viewpoints editor. And we have one more request for Representative Bracy Davis and other candidates. As you answer these questions, I know you're aware that District 15 was drawn to heavily favor a Democratic candidate. However, Florida Democrats have steadily lost ground in registration numbers and in legislative clout. As we talk about specific issues facing your district, please talk about ways you believe a Democrat could effectively represent this district, which, as we addressed, includes some very low-income parts of Central Florida.
First up, the breaking news, which you are going to be tackling very soon. Friday night, House and Senate leaders announced that they have a preliminary budget agreement. It's been a long time since we had to wait this long for a preliminary framework. They plan on including an elimination of sales tax on commercial leases, which will favor the business community, multiple permanent sales tax exemptions that are aimed at families, and about $1 billion in debt reduction and additions to the state reserve and rainy day fund. And since this deal is going to be worked on this week, I would like to get your impression of that framework, especially the tax cuts. Do you believe that those are well considered and would be good for Florida?
First, let me say thank you to the editorial board, and I'm so appreciative of being able to be here and speak to you all and speak to your readers. So you hit the nail right on the head, Chris. Yes, it is a long time coming, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention how unfortunate it is that we have to be in extended session because we did not do the work that we were supposed to do during the 60-day session. We spent a lot of time wasting time as opposed to doing what the Constitution says that we're supposed to do, and that's pass a budget. And so I am headed to Tallahassee on tomorrow morning, and I will take a deeper dive in the budget. I know preliminarily I did have some concerns with what the governor was proposing, and but I am grateful that there is some kind of meeting of the minds. But as was mentioned in the intro, I'm going to be looking very carefully to ensure that what is being proposed would not be harmful to the constituents that I serve. So I'm not 100% ready yet to say either way. When I get to Tallahassee on tomorrow, I'm going to do a deeper dive in the budget and look at what is being offered as it relates to tax cuts. Now, we do know that Floridians all across the board would love to reduce taxes. When the governor made mention of property taxes being reduced, while it sounds good on paper, that always isn't good for the actual constituents, because the property tax money pays for a lot of things. So I'm waiting to take a deeper dive in the budget to see how that fares for the constituents that I serve.
I did want to follow up
Sure.
on that. You hit on the decision that is facing the legislature when you say that some people would like to see sales tax cuts, some people would like to see property tax cuts. All other things being equal, which of those two options, or a combination of, do you think is more fair for residents of District 15?
Probably property taxes being cut with the caveat of a plan on where we would get that revenue from. So I think it's just so disingenuous to play on the hearts, minds, and pocketbooks of Floridians to say that we're going to cut property taxes, but then not talk about where we're going to get that money for teachers and firefighters and schools and police officers and all of that. So, if I had to pick one or the other, perhaps property taxes, because we know that directly affects Floridians as opposed to sales taxes. Outsiders and folks from other places would be affected by that. However, without a clear plan on where will we get that other revenue, I don't think that property taxes is a good idea.
Thank you for that answer. Speaking of possibilities of getting other revenue, tourist development tax dollars have always been top of mind for several years. Simple question: do you support giving local communities more flexibility in the use of tourist development taxes?
Yes. I have a very broad definition of tourism. I think we talked about this last time. I am a advocate for arts and culture, and a broad definition. I believe that when we give money to the communities and we are able to correlate that to tourism, like safety, like roads, I think absolutely. So yes, flexibility is important.
Thank you. And I wanted to drop one more budget question on you. One of the toughest parts of budget negotiations, particularly in this day and age, is that state money that's earmarked for local projects. That's a twofold challenge in today. And at first, you have to find ways to get your projects included in the budget. And then second, you have to do your best to make sure that they don't fall the governor's veto pen. If you are elected for the Senate seat going forward, what types of local projects or what specific local projects would you prioritize for funding? And obviously, you're going to have to do this before the Senate election comes, so you can certainly talk about the coming session as well.
Thank you. So yes, I do understand the governor's veto pen. We were very disappointed on last year when the governor vetoed arts and culture. I am a huge arts and culture advocate. For the last 15 years, I was an executive at the Dr. Phillips Center, and the arts community was beyond disappointed in that veto. As it relates to specific appropriations, if I had a magic wand, and I can just talk about with House District 40, there's a lot of mentorship groups in House District 40, and those same mentorship groups are in Senate District 15 that could definitely use some resources. It makes me think of First Future Leaders United. It's a group in Pine Hill that deals with Evans High School seniors and does college trips. They could definitely use some of that. My Brother's Keeper. And then also some healthcare programs, some healthcare initiatives. We know that there is a huge funding gap when it comes to healthcare. Folks that can't necessarily afford government and subsidized healthcare, but then can't pay for it on their own, so they just don't have any healthcare. There's a huge healthcare desert. So any initiative that would help with those deserts, those community healthcare programs, and those subsidiaries that help folks that are underinsured or not insured, they always could use time, money, and definitely attention from the state government.
Thank you for that answer. One issue that did eventually gain agreement between DeSantis, the House, and Senate was an aggressive new immigration policy. This is sort of a two-part question, but please give us your assessment of the legislation that was passed. First, for lack of a better term, from a public policy or moral standpoint.
First of all, both iterations, I believe, of the bill are unconstitutional. Let's start there. It burns my heart and it saddens me that the legislature has determined that because you're an immigrant or because you speak a different language or because you don't look or talk like someone else, that there's automatically a thought that you are a criminal or that you don't belong here. Both iterations, quite honestly, of the immigration bill that we had to come to do a special session, another, in my opinion, waste of taxpayers' dollars, by the way. Both iterations of that, I think, aren't well suited. It was a waste of time, and it is unconstitutional as it relates to some of the things that ask and call for the death penalty. It doesn't make sense. We know that it is well settled law that you can't take a life unless you've taken a life. And in one of the iterations of the bill, it allows for the death penalty of an immigrant, even if they haven't taken a life. So once again, the legislature is majoring in some things that Floridians are not necessarily asking for. I think all Floridians should have the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. And there should not be an assumption that you are a criminal just because you don't speak the same language or your home and my home are not the same place.
Thank you for that. And the other side of it, agree or disagree, it is on its way to passage. But I wanted to ask you about the fiscal impact of the plan, particularly on the local governments that are now apparently obligated to house and care for people suspected of being in Florida illegally.
Mm-hmm.
Should this plan survive the court challenges, how can those costs be allocated?
Well, I mean, there are going to be costs. I mean, this is going to affect us not just on local governments. Let's remember, a lot of our immigrant communities are in our tourism industry, are in our agriculture industry, and in our construction industry. And, that has chilled those industries because you have our immigrant community, even some of those that are here legally, that are just afraid, right? They are afraid to work. They are afraid to show their faces. And it's so disappointing. So not only is this going to affect, our Orange County jail system and, some of our agencies in terms of where we sit from our municipalities. But this is going to affect our economy as well. And, part of the reason why I think the legislature is trying to lax some of our rules as it relates to children working is because of some of the strengths that's going to be put on workforce, thanks to the bill that we passed. So, the legislature very rarely acknowledges that some of these bills that we passed, while I understand it's a great talking point to Donald Trump and a great kudos to him, but they have lasting impacts and they're going to affect our economy. They're going to affect several industries, tourism, agriculture, construction, and what's probably going to happen is when we see those effects, we're going to go back to the legislature and try to fix it because we see that they have gravely affected Orange County.
I think we've all seen the news about FEMA, a lot of discussion about that. We're at the start of hurricane season as well. There's considerable anxiety over the role that the federal government might play in future emergency management challenges, as well as recovery from major storm damage and other natural disasters. What should the legislature do to be sure Florida is ready to support its residents should we come across a catastrophic event?
Well, I always address this question. We know that, in the state of Florida, we have hurricanes. We have lots of hurricanes, right? And I've just been, disappointed in the fact that we've been bailing out insurance companies for two special sessions now, as opposed to holding them accountable. I fear hurricane season, quite honestly. I believe it started just a couple of days ago. And there are a lot of Floridians right now that are afraid because of what's happening from a federal perspective, but also what's happening right here in Florida. You have, most people whose property insurance has doubled. We've bailed out insurance companies and then allowed them to leave the state of Florida. The Democrats, and I hate to get partisan, but I have to, the Democrats filed lots of amendments saying that if we're going to bail out these insurance companies, let's at least insist that they stay here. It was the Democrats that actually talked about getting these subpoenas so that we can find out that if these insurance companies were hiding money, and we found out that they were. So, and it all boils down to we have insurance companies that are not being honest. We have hurricane season that is on the way. We have insurance premiums that are too high. And then we have FEMA that's uncertain. And so, yes, I join most Floridians in saying that we are worried about hurricane season.
That's a great segue into the next question I had, is about property insurance itself and the market, because as you mentioned, because of what's going on, so many insurers are denying claims or canceling claims at a record pace in the state. What should the legislature do to make insurance more reliable and more affordable in Florida?
Stop bailing out insurance companies without having some prerequisites of their end of the bargain. It was so disappointing. The Democrats, and I hate to continue to be partisan, but the Democrats offered, I think it was 15 amendments when we went to special session of how we can better this bailout. And none of them were accepted. None of them. So you had insurance companies that basically had no accountability, and we bailed them out. We gave them money, and then a couple of them even left the state of Florida and left Floridians high and dry. And then we found out that they were hiding money. We bailed them out thinking that these insurance companies were about to be insolvent, and come to find out they were hiding money and giving money to their stockholders. And the only reason why we were able to find that out, by the way, is because the Democrats put their foot on the gas, and then the Republicans took it up as a talking point. But lest we forget that it started on our side. So yeah, it's a scary place to be. I do have an idea of what we could do about that, though. Mm-hmm. There's a suggestion of a grant program. If you can prove that your property insurance has gone up by X amount of dollars, there was a suggestion by the Democratic Party. It wasn't heard, but we had a bill suggestion that you would apply to a grant program, and that money would go directly to your insurance company to offset, almost like some of these hardening grants and the like, where you can, let's just say your property insurance is $2,200. Well, $400 the state you apply for the grant, and so now only $1,700 out of pocket, $1,800 out of pocket. Those are some of the suggestions that my side of the aisle has put forth to try to ease the problem.
Thank you. I wanted to switch gears to another very big decision that is having major impact on public schools. And that is the issue of state-funded education vouchers. And this is a controversial idea, even among Democrats. What changes, if any, do you think Florida needs to make to the current policy of offering vouchers to any family that requests them?
Chris, if I could have a favorite question, this is it. So first of all, I recognize and realize as a state legislator who has now been here for 3 years that vouchers are here to stay. I recognize that the vouchers, they've been here for 25 years and they're not going anywhere. And I also recognize that the Florida Constitution says that we are to fully fund public education. And so what bothers me about vouchers, even though that I know that they're here to stay, is our first job is to fully fund public education. And if I could change anything about vouchers, it would be that the voucher schools and these private schools should at least take on the credentialing standards of public education since they're getting public dollars. I mean, the fact that you have, private schools that their teachers have never had a college degree, or their teachers, there are no credentials, there are no regulating of the private sector, but yet they get public dollars. And I have a big issue, a huge, gigantic issue with the fact that there is no income discussions on who can get a voucher. I mean, that's problematic, that right now you can be a multi-billionaire and get voucher money. And another issue that I have is, we have these private schools that are using some of our public, like our gymnasiums and our sports teams, and they're able to try out for our sports teams, but that FTE money is not going to the school. So, I mean, it's problematic all across the board. But if I had a magic wand and could fix one thing, it would definitely be for there to be some regulation. There's not enough regulation in the private sector. Right now, if you notice that my hair has locks in it, some private schools can tell me that I can't wear my locks. And, but yet, and if that's fine, if I can't wear my locks, but then you shouldn't be able to take public dollars.
You touched on this next question quite a bit in that answer, but given that most Florida children will remain in public schools, what are the biggest imperatives to maintain that constitutional requirement for a system of free, public, high-quality schools?
To fully fund public education and pay the teachers what they deserve. I had the opportunity this last week to attend 7 graduations. It was a beautiful experience. And, our teachers are doing so much with so little. One of the schools, I'm not going to name it, but one of the schools had a permanent substitute teacher for the entire year because they could not fill the position because of teachers not being paid enough. Teachers need to be paid what they deserve. It burns my heart to hear when teachers say that they have to have a second and a third job. We need to fully fund our public education. We need to make sure that the teachers have all the resources that they need to be successful. And then after that conversation, then we can have a conversation in terms of the private sector. But let's do what the Florida Constitution says we are supposed to do. And let's start by giving the teachers and the schools the resources that they need to be successful. I mean, I read somewhere that hundreds and hundreds of Orange County public school teachers are about to be laid off because of vouchers. Hundreds and hundreds. And that's just so unfortunate. Fully fund public education first and foremost. Let's do what the Constitution says we're supposed to do. Very similar to passing the budget.
Switching gears for a minute. 6 years ago, many Floridians believed that the safety and health of the state's water supply was a top issue. Today, water quality seems to draw very little attention, yet most sources agree that little has improved across the state. What specific steps would you push the legislature to consider when it comes to the health of Florida's rivers, lakes, marshes, other surface water, and also protecting the aquifer that supplies so much drinking water for those of us in the state?
Yeah, I mean, it's an important issue. And while I understand sometimes, with Floridians, the working class Floridians, they're trying to keep lights on and they're trying to keep their refrigerator full and keep rent paid and mortgage paid. So sometimes some of those issues are not in the forefront. But, I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of our neighborhood associations and sit down at a lot of our neighborhood association meetings. And I get that healthcare is important and safety is important, but our drinking water is also important too. So I know it's probably not, on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel right now, but I would suggest that it is still extremely important. I was at a town hall just the other day, and I was thinking that the number one question would be about the ballot initiative, and someone asked me about fluoride and this ban on fluoride. So I think our water, it may not be top of mind, but it's very important. We all understand that we need water to live, and we all understand that water needs not be contaminated. So I think the legislature does have a responsibility to ensure, when we talk about healthy Floridians, we're not just talking about health care, but what we put in our bodies is also concerned as being healthy. And so it needs to be our focus.
Well, that dovetails right into our next question, which is about healthcare. What more can Florida do? What more can the legislature and Tallahassee do to ensure that state residents have access to affordable, accessible healthcare?
So are we going to talk about how good of a job I'm doing at dovetailing into the next question?
You get extra credit.
Okay. 10 points for me. So let's talk about the obvious answer, and is let's stop leaving federal money. Let's expand Medicaid, and let's stop leaving money on the table. Let's stop doing that. That it's so disingenuous that we know that so many Floridians don't have access to healthcare, and we leave money on the table year after year after year after year. Medicaid expansion is extremely important, and we need to stop ignoring that. We need to absolutely stop ignoring that. Also, since we're talking about healthcare, I have to summons my good friend, JJ Holmes, for a second, because if he was sitting right here, he would talk about, obviously, the wait list for the med waiver list and the wait list, and how we should be moving that off. We should be concentrating on the wait list as well. But I think if we care about the health of Floridians, if we care about those that are low socioeconomics, then we would do something about it. And it's disingenuous when legislators say that they care, but then admit to leaving money on the table and not doing anything about it. Let's suck up our pride and let's expand Medicaid, period. Full stop, end of discussion. And I know my Republican colleagues won't want to and don't want to and don't want to admit that they need to, besides privately, by the way. Oftentimes I hear it privately, but then in forums like this, because, the powers that be may not like that, they won't say it, but privately they say it all the time.
Well, and I know that you know that there are probably another dozen questions that we could ask you, but we did promise you that we'd get you wrapped up. And so before we go to your closing statement, I did want to remind the people who are watching this that the Sentinel does plan to make an endorsement in this race, but we believe that District 15 voters are best served if they do also their own research, including checking out each candidate's website, their social media posts, and of course, following along with our excellent news coverage. But along those lines, we want to remind our readers that our endorsement decisions are made by the editorial board, the three of us that you just met here today, and we get no input from our consultation with the newsroom when we make these decisions, that they are kept completely separate from that. But the most important thing to remember, though, is that the candidates in this race are working very hard to earn your vote, and each will have other opportunities to reach out to you. So take a good look. Decide which of these candidates best represents your own values and your plans and hopes for this race. And be sure that whether you want to vote by mail or at an early voting site or at the polls, that you make sure that you turn out to cast your ballot if you live inside this Senate district. It's a very important race. And with that, we'd like to invite Representative Bracy Davis to give us your closing tips on why voters should choose you.
It's an honor. So again, thank you to the Sentinel for offering this space. I'm always delighted to talk with the editorial board. Also, to the members of House District 40, I want to say thank you. It has been nothing but an honor to serve you for the past 3 years. I have fought the good fight. I have fought tirelessly on behalf of the constituency of House District 40. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to expand that service. I'm thankful for the endorsement of Senator Geraldine Thompson's family. And I am ready to continue her work. We lost a giant in Senator Thompson, a giant. And I I don't say that lightly. I'm grateful for some of the work that she has done, and I'm ready to continue some of that work in the voting space, in the education space, in the history space. I passed several bills, and Senator Geraldine Thompson was the Senate sponsor. And we've worked on the Harriet T. and Harriet B. Moore Voting Rights Act together. We did town hall meetings together, and we got appropriations in the budget together. And I promise that I will, when elected, I will do just what Senator Geraldine Thompson did. And I will advocate fiercely for the forgotten, for the voiceless, for those that people have cast away and laid aside. I will be your advocate. I will be your ally. I will work hard on behalf of Senate District 15. And for those that don't represent the Democratic Party, let me tell you this. I just passed a bill unanimously in every committee and on the House floor that had to do with children in need of services and families in need of services. This was the agency bill for the Department of Juvenile Justice. And let me tell you why this is important. When departments and agencies want to pass their bills, they usually don't go to Democrats because we are the super minority. And the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Justice came to me and asked me to run his bill. Why? Because he knows I can legislate across the aisle. He knows that I am a leader who listens. And he knows that it's not always about Democrat and Republican, but somebody that can get the job done. My name is LaVon Bracy Davis, and my mission is to lift the voices of the unheard, build bridges to the community, and deliver on promises. And if you think about that, lift, build, deliver, you come up with LBD, LaVon Bracy Davis. Y'all like that. Thank you for having me on the call. Bye-bye.